Hello and welcome to this episode of the How to Game Differently podcast with me, your special guest host for this episode. My name is Dan and I'm joined by our extra special guests. That is Tom.
Hello.
And your regular host for every other episode, James.
I have been demoted to just regular. I'm no longer the special one amongst this.
Well, maybe we'll promote you again for next time.
Thank you. Just as an explainer to everyone, so as a plan, we're going to try and do a bit of a rotation of the hosts just to get a different bit of flavour. We all like a different flavour of ice cream now and again, so...
In the spirit of rotation, anyway. I just spun around my chair as well. So
great. So you're nice and dizzy for us.
Yep. True rotation.
Cool.
Right. This episode we'll be talking about something that's close to all of our hearts. That is video game music. But first, I just want to ask the guys, what's new? What have we been playing? Any gaming news that we've heard that we want to share and chat about?
So I think some of the biggest news that's come out the past couple of weeks now is E3 is back in June. Woo. So they're doing it all live now instead of obviously having a venue because, still going through this lovely pandemic of ours. And so they're doing it all live with quite a few big names coming over there, like Microsoft, Nintendo, Square, Enix, I think are doing a bit, Ubisoft. And so I think that's quite exciting that we get that back in June, getting a lot of new gaming announcements. Because I don't know if you guys remember, last year was quite lackluster for big game announcements.
Yeah, a lot of things got cancelled and pushed back as well. So
yeah,
we're expecting some big releases off the back of this one, James. What are the predictions?
I kind of had this idea for a video in the future, but so it's just something off the top of my head. I think you're going to have Microsoft bringing out some big names for their Game Pass. Things like Bethesda's new games, because they had one about being out in space. It was like Elder Scrolls, but in space was kind of like the teaser. And then there's a new Elder Scrolls game that will eventually come out. I don't think it'll be
Elder
this
Scrolls
year.
6.
I think it may be... Yeah, I don't think it'll be this year. I think it may be pushing it maybe 2023.
I think they've had that. They teased that like years ago, didn't they? Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, but it does take a long time for them to do them. And to be fair, they are fantastic games. So
they are. Yeah, but, why tease it unless you've got something to show?
Because they're such a tease.
Because they can.
So from my side, they teased Breath of the Wild 2, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, like 2 years ago, and we have had nothing since then. So again, I think fingers crossed that they're going to say something on that at least. But yeah, so
people know it's coming.
Well, they know it's coming just to know a bit more about it because they had this really cool teaser trailer and that was it. But yeah, I think there's going to be loads of big announcements this year because, like Tom said, a lot of them got pushed back as well. So it gives them a bit of breathing time to smoothen some of these games out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a bit of a random tangent, but so the last year, for the first time in 20 odd years, WWE didn't release like a version of their games because of the pandemic, but also because 2K20 was possibly the worst game ever made. So
that looks absolutely crap.
Yeah, so they literally said we're just not going to release a game till 2021, and they've gone nearly 2 years without a game. So that's a really good example of where they just took a step back through the pandemic, and it's given them an extra year.
Kind of the Cyberpunk 2077 effect, where studios are actually now taking the time to finish stuff before they release it.
Well, I think the whole Cyberpunk situation's even enhanced the whole take your time to do it, because if you look at Halo Infinite, the new one, that was supposed to have come out, was it November last year, and they've pushed it back to, I think, like September this year, I think it was. Just to get the quality right.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, you talk about like Cyberpunk and stuff and the lessons learned. I think No Man's Sky is a massive lesson.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the problem is No Man's Sky, from what I've seen, is now actually quite a good game. It's a very good game. The problem is it was so
I know a few
rubbish
people who play it
when it first came out that it really hurt the sales, and they basically had to play catch up from that point. And if it was, and I know they delayed it a lot anyway, but if they'd have delayed it that extra bit longer and brought it out looking something like what it does now, then I think it would have really helped them.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, because now, like you say, it looks absolutely amazing. And the concept originally was really cool. I think you get pets now or something, which automatically makes any game better.
Yeah, it was such
fishing
a
mini
hyped game. Love a fishing mini game.
I don't think it was a JRPG action game.
Oh, damn it. Yeah, people are saying now that it's like it is now what they promised it would be in, what was it, 2014 or something like that, 2016.
They released it, wasn't it?
Yeah, people are saying that the content in there now is what they promised that it would be years ago, which, I mean, why not? Yeah, why not have just taken the extra time?
There you go.
And this is one of the things I've always liked about Nintendo, that they do delay the games to make sure that they tweak as much as they possibly can. Like, there's been a few like recent ones for the Nintendo Switch where they delayed it for 6 months, one of them up to a year, and just did loads of quality checks. Like one in mind is Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I think was delayed by 9 months, and I'm glad they did because it's an amazing game, and I can't think of what it could have been like beforehand. So I'm glad they took that time.
It's cool. So what have we been playing then recently? What has everyone been getting up to game wise?
So basically, since earlier this year, I've been going back to it every to and fro, and this game will come up later. I've been trying to finally 100% GTA Vice City, playing it on the PC with a few mods basically to make it run better and a few graphical improvements. But yeah, so since about January, I basically went through most of the story and most of the missions in about a month, sort of playing it for a couple of hours every now and then. And then the last few weeks I've sort of been dipping in every few days, doing like some of the idiot side missions here and there. Things like the ambulance missions and the fireman missions and that sort of thing.
I didn't even know you could count those towards like a percentage completion.
To get 100%
I
completion, you've got to do everything, including the insane stunt bonuses.
Wow. So... Oh God. And what percentage would you say you're at now? Like 98, 99%?
I'm like 90%, I think.
Still some insane stunts to go.
Yeah, I've got insane stunts, hidden packages. And what was the other one? Oh, holding up all the shops, robbing all the shops. Yeah.
If you really got to do that as well.
Yeah. So that's fun.
Insane.
But yeah, Vice City.
That's fun.
So I've been playing a bit more Super Smash Brothers Ultimate because they had some extra DLC. Pyra and Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was a bit controversial within the fan base because they're another anime sword fighter, which people don't seem to like. But let's face it, swords are the best weapon in these games. There's no, like, you can make so many cool designs with a sword that clearly the main character's always going to have a sword. So
BFS, big effing sword.
Yeah, that's it. Well, these characters actually are the swords, so it makes it a little bit different. Yeah, but anyway, really cool characters. I played the actual game they're from, which is a really good JRPG, and they're really cool moveset because you can switch between two characters practically instantly. And they have similar move bases, but one's quicker, one's more powerful. So you can kind of combo doing fast attacks and then jumping into doing a big swing attack to just knock off the opponent straight away. So I played a bit of that, and I've also been playing a little bit of Pac-Man 99.
Wow.
Yeah, it's based off Tetris 99. So it's like a battle royale game where you're facing loads of people playing the game at the same time. But for the Pac-Man side of things, the more ghosts you eat and the berries and stuff, you can send like kind of like a ghosty Pac-Man to slow you down. And
Right.
it just makes the game harder. It's basically, you against 98 other people, and you have to try and come on
God.
top.
I think that normal Pac-Man was complicated enough for me, for my small brain.
I'll be honest with you. I'm terrible at regular Pac-Man, but Pac-Man 99 I'm not too bad at. I don't know what it is. I think it's just because it's quite simplified, but obviously brings a twist to it. But yeah, no, it was really fun. And if you got the online Nintendo Switch package, it's totally free to download and play. So if you got a Switch, go and download it, give it a go. It's free. Yeah, go for it.
What about you, Dan?
For me, how about me? I just the other day finished my first playthrough, and I say first because I immediately jumped back into a second playthrough of Persona 4 Golden on the PC, which is another JRPG. Story-wise, character-wise, setting-wise, all that kind of stuff. I think it might be the best game that I've ever played.
What?
And I love a good, immersive, story-driven game.
Yeah, we were messaging each other about this, and I think as much as you love this one, I think whenever you can play Persona 5, I think that's going to change your view.
I mean, I had to tell someone. I was like, James, you play JRPGs. You got to hear about this thing. It was, I think it was gaming career, if you like, changing experience. It was really, really fantastic. Couldn't recommend it enough. Anyone who likes RPG games and has a PC.
Or PlayStation 4, I believe it's also on.
It was a PS Vita game originally.
Was it a Vita game? Yeah, because I know
so it was
the games were.
Yeah, so it was released in 2008 as a Vita exclusive, and then they remade it in like 2012, I think, for the PS2.
Is that the golden version?
Yeah, so Golden is like I think maybe it was released in 2008 in Japan on the Vita, which means like 4 people played it. And then they remade it and stuck the word Golden on the end, and then I think they released it on Steam like a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so then, obviously, me being me, it took me a while to kind of catch up. And it's like 100 or so hour playthrough of this game, and absolutely loved it from start to finish. Cool. Incredible. So I've done that, and so Persona is a spin-off of a larger series called Megami Tensei, and they are releasing Shin Megami Tensei 3 Remastered later this month. So I will be spending a lot of money on that when it comes out on Steam.
Lovely.
There's also a new one coming out, isn't there?
It might be that.
No, there's another one. There's a brand new one coming out.
A new Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Oh, whichever one it is. It's. I know it's coming up for the Nintendo Switch because it was a.
So I think it might be a Switch exclusive. Yeah, the thing is with Megami Tensei games is that they bring them out on one console. Usually, I think, and that's it. So.
And you have to wait 5 years for the next one for it to come out on.
And it's never the same one either. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be a timed exclusive, a bit like what they've done with the new Monster Hunter, where it's going to be like, I think, 6 months on the Nintendo Switch and then going on to PC.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wait 10 years for them to bring it out on Steam.
Good old Steam.
Then get it then. And so after finishing P4, I have jumped straight into, kind of doing a second playthrough, and also The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel.
Yeah, which is another one you mentioned to me about, and it's really inspired me to try and play. There's another series that is kind of spun off of because from my understanding, all the games are within the same planet or same world, but it's all actually happening within only a few months from one another.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Legend of Heroes sub-series and spin-offs and all that kind of good stuff. So moving on to game music.
Woo!
Music in video games. So I thought what we would do is go on a journey through time. If you'll come with us on our journey.
I've just automatically got Doctor Who music playing in my head.
I was wondering if we could get like a harp to play, like. Does anyone know any harp
you can give us a
players?
rendition.
We're not the musical ones, that's you.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, do you know any harp players?
I could learn.
You could learn. Cool.
If you have a harp laying around, I could have a go.
Yeah, I've got one in my shed if you want to use it.
Yeah, nice.
Cool, I'll bring it round later.
Because you just have one lying around.
Yeah?
Yeah, why not? Who doesn't have a harp lying around? Just for this occasion. So, we're going to talk a little bit about video game soundtracks through history. And a little bit how game consoles and hardware and all that kind of stuff has molded and shaped game soundtracks through time. We're going to talk a little bit, first of all, about the sort of arcade and the first two console generations kind of era of games. Arcade cabinets, early consoles, stuff like that. They didn't really have a lot of audio capabilities. So I would say they didn't really have what we might call a soundtrack as such. They didn't really have like background music. They could still make sound. Some of them were, they had like 2, maybe 3 channels. So like 2 or 3 sounds that they could make at any one time. Can anyone kind of think of any examples of game music from the sort of arcade era that stands out and is memorable to us today?
So I think me just bringing up like Pac-Man 99, just so instantly Pac-Man, the doodly-doo kind of like introduction,
Yeah.
and it's just the whole wagga 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 sound. Like, the kind of like death sound. Which again is just so iconic for even just so like you say, only like a couple of tunes.
Yeah, just like 2 beeps that it could make basically at the same time.
And even just like Pong, you know, which I think is like the very first game kind of created. Even just the like, if you listen to it, you just recognize that's the Pong sound of just the little dot just going from one side to the other and just knocking each other.
Yeah. So I mean, they had like sound effects, but they also couldn't really do a lot of sound effects and music like at the same time, which is what I noticed. So like you say with Pac-Man, you kind of get a like a jingle, or I guess maybe call it like an ident or something that just plays before a level, you know, and then the level's just kind of silent.
It's a little bit similar to pinball machines, because when you boot up a pinball machine, it obviously has like a little jingle, and then you're popping it, and then it's only when it hits something it will activate another sound, and all the rest of it is just silence completely.
Yeah. So you're kind of almost making the soundtrack just by just with the sound effects. A very cursory Google search turned up that the first game that kind of had background music was Space Invaders. I don't know if anyone can remember what the Space Invaders kind of music sounded like.
Not really.
I'll be honest, my only specialist around Space Invaders, or my knowledge, is the crisps called Space Raiders.
Did they have background music?
No, but they are pickled onion.
Ooh. So the Space Invaders music was basically just 4 tones that were just 4 descending tones. So it was just like beep, 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 which gradually got faster as the enemies got closer and closer to you.
Ooh.
Which is very cool. As I kind of said earlier, the first console generation that really had what we would think of today as a soundtrack was the third console generation. I'm sure there are probably people that would say, like, well, actually, I think you'll find. But I'm hosting this episode, so I get to.
Look, we're all like in our late 20s, early 30s. Like, we didn't live for a lot of this, right? We're doing research here.
Yeah, this is all secondhand knowledge. So the NES, which is probably the defining console of the third generation, had 5 channels rather than, sort of 1 or 2. And these are 2 pulse waves, which are kind of like beeps, a triangle wave, which is kind of like a buzz, a noise generator, which is very cool, which is like white noise, which they would use for like percussion sounds and sound effects like fire and explosions and stuff, and one sample player, which could play very, very poor quality 8-bit samples. And that was it. That's all they had for music. 2 beeps, a buzz, some white noise, and some crappy samples. And, so basically what kind of impresses me when you listen back to soundtracks like the Mario Brothers on the NES is that they had to, they just had to work with that. They created such an iconic soundtrack.
Yeah.
With like 2 beeps and a buzz,
Yeah.
basically.
Also, just like I say, it comes down to console capability that they didn't have the capability to play the music, but also because you're using cartridges that are so small that it's just storing the music. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
One of the things I still find quite incredible is that the original Mario theme, the overworld theme, and same for the Legend of Zelda, the opening theme, it's still the same tune up till now. They've just enhanced it. So they took that as their template still, and like I say, just enhanced it to the capabilities they have now.
Yeah, like it's kind of music boiled down to its kind of very bare bones. And I guess if they've enhanced it now, it's kind of what it could have sounded like, or people had to imagine it kind of sounded like even when they were playing it.
So just as like another comparison, I'm using Legend of Zelda again. If you put Legend of Zelda next to Breath of the Wild, it's essentially the same game, where you're an open world.
Yeah.
You explore it however you want to explore it, and yet the music, comparing them together, you can tell that they tried their hardest in the original game to make what it is now. If you put them side by side, it's really quite fun actually listening to both of them and just visualizing them together as well.
It's just so it's almost like they were painting a picture or something, and they only had like 3 crayons or like 5 crayons, and they were just like, "This is all we have. Go and make a painting that we can hang up in a gallery or something."
Yeah, that's quite a good analogy, actually. I like that.
One that me and my other half Hannah joke about all the time is a game called Dr. Mario. Don't know if you guys have ever.
Oh yes, which is a rip-off of Puyo Puyo.
Yeah, it's like a kind of block-breaking, sort of like Tetris, basically. But the music for that game is such an earworm. Like, it's so annoying. As soon as you get it in your head, that's it for like a week.
Have you been playing it on the phone? Because there's like a mobile version.
Is there? I didn't know.
Yeah, they released it a couple of years ago. It's still iconic though, for the game. Like, it is actually quite a fun game if you go past the, like you say, the annoying sound.
So I guess moving forward in time, if you'll come forward in time with us on our journey, we have the 16-bit era of console, including the Super Nintendo, the Sega Mega Drive, or Genesis to our American friends.
Other Phil Collins related band names are available.
Okay, so we've moved on in hardware capability. So whereas the NES had 5 channels, the Super Nintendo had 8 channels, so 8 sounds that it could make at the same time, and I believe these were all sample players as well. There weren't synthesizers making beeps or, beeps and buzzes and white noise and that kind of stuff. It was bit samples, An interesting thing that I read about the Super Nintendo is that obviously with these old consoles they couldn't stream audio because they didn't use CDs or anything like that. We were still using cartridges, so they had to load the music into RAM first, and the amount of RAM on the audio processor of the Super Nintendo was a whopping 64 kilobytes of RAM.
Oh my goodness.
And that had to contain both the music that it was going to play and the code to tell it to play the music.
How many floppy disks did that need?
I don't know how many floppy disks, but 64 kilobytes is enough to store a third of a second CD quality audio in mono.
It's incredible how just technology has evolved over the years. And to be fair, CDs, like floppy disk to CD, actually didn't take too long, and then USB didn't seem to take too long either after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hardware is definitely coming along, and I bet probably people at the time thought that 64K was like a king's ransom in memory that they were allowed to work with, compared to 2 beeps and a buzz. It was now like 8 samples, and that was probably like an orchestra at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I've got a bit of a list up of all the 16-bit games, and just the first one, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I was thinking back about that game, and just the fact that it had lightning effects when it was stormy weather. You could hear the rain in it. It was, again, a massive leap.
So that was Super Nintendo was A Link to the Past.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so they could actually afford to have like a recorded sample of some lightning, rather than having to, like in the old consoles, they would have to kind of, use the white noise generator and a synth thing to like do an impression of lightning. You know how like old games, when something explodes or is on fire, you just hear the white noise of that kind of like sort of sound.
Yeah.
Now they could actually have a recording of some lightning or some fire or something. So very exciting.
Just again, looking back at this list, you got your Mega Man X and just general Mega Man tunes, which I did send you guys a bit over, which I think has such a cool iconic intro for it as well. And there was one that I picked up listening to, which I didn't realize it was a tune for, but the DuckTales video game.
Nice.
DuckTales had a video game for the Super NES, and it's called the Moon Level. If you go and listen to it, you'll recognize the tune, and you'll never know. Like, I didn't realize that was a tune from there. I just thought it was just a tune someone made, but you'll recognize it straight away if you listen to it.
Right. Wow, a cryptic Easter egg.
But to be fair, that was actually a very iconic game in itself, because it had the whole side-scrolling downward kind of stab, which Shovel Knight kind of based its games off of.
Nice. That kind of what do they call that? Like a Metroidvania sort of a thing.
Oh no! Don't go into the Metroidvania side of things. That's a different.
No, am I wrong?
So the DuckTales and Shovel Knight games is more of like a side scroller. Metroidvania,
like a Metroidvania game.
No, Metroidvania is called a Metroidvania because it's from Metroid and Castlevania, and their style of games was that you would return back to the areas you were before, while as a side scroller, like say, Super Mario and all that, you'd have levels, so you wouldn't really seamlessly have to return back to another level to get an upgrade or anything like that. You just continue on playing the game, whilst Metroidvanias, you had to return back to an area to get an item, to then go to a new area, which gets you an upgrade, which then may get you to return back to another area, because there was an area you couldn't get to until you had that upgrade. So it's a lot of like backtracking. So it's similar to like in the last podcast when you were talking about Resident Evil. When you were talking about it kind of made me think that Resident Evil might be kind of classified as a Metroidvania in that sense.
Kind of almost in a 3D version of a Metroidvania.
So someone who's explained Metroidvanias much better than me is my friend Avalon. I mentioned this in the last podcast, but he's doing a Legend of Zelda randomizer. In the first 2 episodes, he talks about what makes a Metroidvania. So, like I say, he explains it much better than I ever will. So I'll definitely recommend going to watch one of those videos.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I always struggle with these kind of definitions of stuff because, like, roguelike is one that I always struggle with because it's almost like every game ever describes itself as a roguelike.
A roguelike is basically a randomizer. You can class it. Minecraft is potentially a randomizer in itself because it just generates a new game. But if you look at games like Dead Cells, you play through it as much as you can, you die, and then you come back to the start. You may be allowed to keep a couple of upgrades, but you essentially, if you die, you restart from where you were at the beginning with near enough to nothing.
I'll mention this again a little bit later, but I was playing a game that sounds exactly like that, called Noita, which is also on the PC, which has some really cool music stuff going on under the hood. Just to kind of, segue us back to game music there smoothly.
Very smooth.
Just to get us back on topic. So, where were we? The 16-bit era, we had the Super Nintendo, 64 kilobytes of RAM. We also had the Sega Mega Drive, which had 2 sound chips. So it had kind of like the synthesizer thing of the NES going on and samples at the same time. So you could kind of do your chip tune style soundtracks as well as some more advanced kind of samples and stuff like that. What have we mentioned? Link to the Past,
Mega Man, DuckTales,
DuckTales.
Yeah, there's so many. To be fair, I think the NES generation was kind of like, in my personal opinion, when games start to get a lot better in the graphics, the like we're saying now, the music, and just the movement of the characters and everything. It's like Donkey Kong Country is highly praised as being like probably one of the best, if not the best, side-scrolling platformer. And for a game that came out in 1994 and still hasn't been beaten in some eyes, that's quite an achievement for that era.
Yeah, definitely. And even in this era of games and kind of the next era, the 32-bit era, the Super Nintendo and the games for the SNES was still going strong. Like for a 16-bit console, it lasted well into the next kind of generation, if you like, I guess, off of the strength of the games.
Yeah, and we kind of touched on that in the last podcast, didn't we? Where we talked about like how our introduction to gaming was in the late-ish 90s, and just the enhancements that came from it.
I guess reading up on all of this stuff, all of the sound capabilities of these consoles, like we didn't know how good we had it. These consoles that we grew up with were just like absolute beasts compared to these.
To be honest, I kind of think I prefer the 18-bit to the 13-bit. I think it's just like that kind of classic retro sound. Just to me, just sounds better. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just feel the nostalgia for the sort of PS1.
Yeah, as soon as we get sort of 32-bit games and the late 90s, a lot of the PS1 games and PC games, it's the nostalgia of it for me.
So further to what you just touched on, James, the technology, or what we've been talking about the whole time, really, technology and advancements in music and game sound and stuff like that. Maybe this is the point where I go on my epic Final Fantasy rant.
Oh, God. Right, so my only advice to everyone is get yourself comfortable, get yourself a drink, get the popcorn ready, and have a good old listen.
So the Final Fantasy games from number 1 to about number 11, the soundtracks to those were composed by a man, I'm sure I'm going to butcher his name, called Nobuo Uematsu. I think I said that right. And so I recently played through Final Fantasy VI, which was originally for the Super Nintendo. And as we were just mentioning, obviously the thing only had like 64 kilobytes of RAM to work with when it was doing the music. And what he did with that capability was just amazing, like a full orchestral score, and it had, different character themes, and someone's character theme would come up again later and be like really sad or really happy, or there'd be medleys of loads of different songs together. And of course the final boss theme, of course, as it is in every Final Fantasy game, is just completely epic. And but it uses these kind of really low quality, funny sounding, like 8-bit samples of strings and voices and stuff like that. And the thing that really amazed me when I kind of was reading about it is that someone asked this guy, like, where did you study music? And he basically said, I never studied music. I don't even know how to play an instrument. I just kind of gave it a go. I just played around with it and saw what I could do. I was going to say, anyone out there who's kind of struggling with a bit of, imposter syndrome or anything like that, I feel like that's a really, really inspiring story, especially hearing the soundtrack and what he did.
Yeah, definitely. It just shows you what passion can create in a way, isn't it? Because if you look at some of the most famous artists in the world, as for art and music, a lot of them didn't have anything, did they? No studying and stuff, just the passion.
Well, famously, Paul McCartney can't read music.
Yeah, that was it.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
I mean, it's just incredible. But like to sort of bring it back to what I was trying to say is the difference between the soundtracks. And earlier I linked a track from Final Fantasy VII, which was obviously for the PS1, just a generation later, called One Winged Angel, and it's like the final boss theme from Final Fantasy VII. And that is like a full kind of orchestra type thing. The difference in the sound quality is just like really, you'd think it was, decades later, really, this thing came out, but it was, only a few years, I think.
Just on that song, so obviously it's very iconic for the kind of like violin kind of section right at the beginning. So Sephiroth was a new character they brought into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
And I knew you were going to mention Smash Brothers.
Any excuse.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why I'm talking about this specifically. So if you haven't seen the trailer for his reveal, it starts off with all the heroes getting beaten by the big baddie, and they're all looking like they're going to be in so much trouble, like they all go die and stuff. And then just all of a sudden, the villain gets cut right in half, and everyone's like, "Oh, what is it?" And like, who could it be that's so strong that could instantly kill the villain? And just that one tone at the beginning of One Winged Angel, that little violin. If you watch the fans' reactions, they all just jump up because they just recognize that one little bit. They're like, "Oh, it's Sephiroth," and it's just that one little. It's just that one little tone, but that one little bit, and everyone knew exactly what it was.
Such a recognizable, iconic sort of bit of music, and to think that the guy that wrote that thing couldn't even play an instrument. Difference in quality as well, from because the Final Fantasy VI soundtrack sounds quite similar, I think, to the Link to the Past soundtrack. It's got the same sort of tone about it. So the difference between 6 and 7 being on the PS1 is just amazing. And I guess that comes from them starting to use CDs instead of cartridges and that kind of stuff. So you could obviously stream audio from a CD. You didn't have to load it all up into. I think this is how it works. I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. You're more of the computer expert here than I am.
Like it's literally just basically put that the 32-bit consoles obviously had proper sound cards, even if they were what's the word, integrated, they still had dedicated sound cards that could perform far better than previous ones, and they were literally streaming off of the CD. And in fact, some PlayStation 1 games, you can actually plug into CD players and just play the soundtrack.
Which I learnt with one of my favourite games that I mentioned last time, Tekken 3, which, I think my head hit the ceiling the first time I just put that in a CD player out of boredom, and it just started playing the soundtrack.
There you go. You can do it with Tomb Raider as well.
Of course.
Speaking of soundtracks, and just I want to mention Super Smash Brothers Melee, not Melee, Ultimate one last time. I'm just booting up the game actually very, very quickly.
Sure, it won't be the last time.
It won't be the last time. There's the one of the cool features in the game is it has music for every single game franchise that it represents. So,
Yeah.
like for instance, when you like get a brand new character, you unlock all the songs. Only 1,017 songs on
Tiny.
here that I've at least unlocked. So I think there's a few more, but it takes 35 hours. So 35 hours, 21 minutes, and 22 seconds to listen to it all, and that's just gained from all sorts of series like Final Fantasy, Sonic, Pac-Man, everything.
And so this must be a really great game for like popularizing those old series, right? Like Mega Man and that kind of thing.
Definitely. So, like, for instance, Super Smash Melee, which came out for the GameCube, it introduced a character called Marth and a character called Roy, which came from Fire Emblem. And this was the first introduction for people in Europe and America to actually know these characters, because none of their games had released over here. And like I say, it was everyone was like, "Oh, who is this character? Who is this sword fighter, the swordman and stuff?" And then just from that, made the games more popular. So then they started releasing them over in Europe and America, and they weren't massively well received then. But later in the years, they're a major big Nintendo franchise. And in my personal opinion, I think it all resembles from Melee, where they just slowly introduced this character.
All thanks to Super Smash.
Oh yeah, definitely. Super Smash is if you can get your character into Super Smash, it makes your game or your series of games much, much more popular in a massive way.
I do think because obviously Joker from Persona 5 is in Smash Brothers Ultimate, isn't he? So I guess maybe that's why 5 is now really popular.
Oh no, 5 was always popular. I think that was like a game that got 10 out of 10 straight away. But the interesting thing about the actual Super Smash Ultimate game is the menu is actually copied, or at least inspired from Persona 5. So I can't remember the name of the director for Super Smash, but he was a massive Persona 5 fan. That the whole swapping from, like, if you click onto the icon or to go into like a battle and stuff, it kind of like flips into another scene with different lighting, and again, very much stolen from Persona.
That's awesome. I think that more games should be modeled after Persona, if you ask me. So, after playing literally one of them.
So this has now become the Super Smash Brothers podcast instead of the music podcast.
Anyway, joined.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is, if you have the game and you want to get into video game music of all sorts of eras, you have 1,000 tracks to listen to on there. And they even done a feature where when you listen to the music, you can go into like a sleep mode, so you can turn off the screen and you can walk around with it just playing, or have your headphones in. Basically, essentially, you're carrying like a 300-pound MP3 player, but you, like I said, you got 1,000 songs, 35 hours of music to listen to of all these amazing tracks from all these different games. Anyway, rant over. Please continue.
So we've finally reached 5th generation, where game music now actually sounds like music, like you would get if you bought a CD or something like that. It's now CD quality. Let's open up the floor to you guys. What are some PS1/N64 era game soundtracks that you remember fondly?
Hey, I'm going to shock everyone and mention the Tomb Raider series.
No.
Especially the first 3. So the music of the games was produced by a gentleman called Nathan McCree, who is a reasonably well thought of music producer, quite well known. Produced for the Spice Girls, I believe. Interestingly,
Wow.
and if you go look him up on Wikipedia, he did quite a few interesting films, TV shows, games. He's done all sorts. But one of the first big things he did was the Tomb Raider games, and the sound in the Tomb Raider games is very. We were talking earlier, I think, before the podcast, about how in certain games the sound can make the setting seem bigger than it actually is, or
Yeah.
and in the game, so a lot of the time the background is sort of, especially the first couple, it's sort of background ambience of sort of echoing, and you hear the odd animal, and you hear echoey caves and water running and things. But every so often, when something important happens, you'll hear music. So the most well-known, or one of the most well-known bits of music in Tomb Raider is when you see the T-Rex in the first game. There's really tense classical music playing in the background as the T-Rex attacks you. There's a few bits in the game where the soundtrack sort of tells you what an important moment you're in, or it sets the scene for where you are.
The idea of the game just being like an interactive film.
Yeah, and we talked about the video games are art, and you have the people in charge of the sound and the people in charge of the images, and that was the sound of the game was so important in creating the atmosphere and the mood and the story, but it was also just genuinely nice music to listen to, some of the music, so much so that the London Symphony Orchestra actually remade all of the best music from the original Tomb Raider games, and did a few live performances in London, recorded it, and I believe is on Spotify, and you can buy a nice CD version of it. But yeah, it's just fantastic music.
And for me, another big shocker, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time has a fantastic soundtrack, and I know, shocker. If it has tunes from nearly every situation. A personal favorite for me is the Gerudo Valley tune. Now, to me, that sounds quite Spanish, and the sounding it's a lot of tapping noise and stuff. It's really cool, really catchy sounds. And then you got the Temple Time music, and it's just like I say, it just picks up different dramatic sounds for so many things. There's so many lovely calming sounds, and then urgent sounds when you're in a fight, and even just the sounds for icons to happen for if you're locking on to or clicking on something. It all just works so well. And similar to what Tom was just saying, they did a lot of orchestral versions for all the Legends of Zelda series, and I actually quite happily, willingly listened to a 25th anniversary CD of a orchestra doing again some of the best songs from the Legend of Zelda, and again came to London. I completely missed it. I think it was quite expensive, and I was just nah, not gonna go there, but completely regret it now.
It's such an important part of the experience of playing a game, especially obviously games that are very story driven, like both of those that you guys mentioned.
Yeah, and the last thing I just was going to mention was again, the music can set the tone of how a situation is played. With the game having the time jump, if you first visit Hyrule Castle, the actual Hyrule Town, I think they called it. When you, as a kid, it's all happy. It's like a carnival happening. You can hear people dancing, laughing, singing, and all sorts. But when you go into the time jump, everyone's turned into zombies, and all you can hear is screams and this daunting sound all around you, and it's just such a change in tempo for the area. Like the visuals is obviously quite a massive change because there's ruined buildings, but the music amplifies it because you've got like things like crows making that going off in the background, and like I say, just people screaming. So that's just
kind of a guy, don't want to harp on about these games too much, but I mean it kind of reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy VI. Because like spoiler alert for a 30-year-old game or whatever that is. So your team kind of loses, like you're trying to save the world and you basically lose, and the bad guy wins and like destroys the world. And so you get a lot of the music from earlier, which was kind of happy and glorious and fantasy sounding. And then in the second half of the game, after the end of the world has happened, the same tunes happen again, but they sound kind of like creepy and weird and bad. You get such a bad feeling.
Yeah, I think that they're some of the best tunes.
Yeah,
it just gives that eerie vibe of like, again, it's like a happy memory turned into a nightmare.
Yeah, so cool when a game can do that just through the music. It's so good.
It sort of reminds me a bit of a game I was going to bring up, Croc. So Croc is a bit of a weird game because the graphics, the music, the setting, the characters are all better than the gameplay. But that's a different sort of discussion for later. But the amazing thing about Croc is depending on the levels or world you're in, the music varies so much. So when you're above ground, the music is really sort of happy-go-lucky. There's balloons around. It's all bright and happy. And when you're underground, it's sort of dark and dingy and sort of downtrodden music that sort of almost makes you feel fearful. And it's such a contrast going from one level to another.
I have to say, this is the first time I've ever heard of Croc. And just, again, quick Google search. It's got 96% liked Google users.
It's a great game.
Have you been missing out?
Yeah, it's
fantastic game.
PlayStation classic. It
really is.
It's one of the better ones. Ish.
So I want to just list off a few because I could come up with 100 PS1 soundtracks that I really love. Just kind of to quickfire a couple of them off. Spyro the Dragon.
Sick. And Stuart Copeland from The Police wrote a lot of that.
He took it right out of my mouth. Yeah, I only learned years later.
So I told you that, so I can take the credit.
It's your fact. You can claim that one. Yeah, I only learned that years and years later after obviously many years of listening to The Police and stuff like that. I was like, oh my god, really? All of the music I liked made by like the same 3 people. It's crazy. So Spyro the Dragon, fantastic soundtrack. I can't think of a more distinctive soundtrack. So like as soon as you hear it, you know what game it's from. Crash Bandicoot.
Hey.
It's just such a like as soon as you hear like the first note of the music, you know what game is coming.
I almost want to sing it. I can't, but I almost want to sing the opening tune as you turn the first game on. It's just fantastic.
So brilliant. Obviously, I kind of another one that I rabbit on about all the time, Tekken 3, but it's kind of techno rock something soundtrack, which is awesome.
And that's legit. You've legit just listened to that for fun, for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
I remember back in the day you had a Creative Zen MP3 player. And I remember just seeing what was on there, and we would just plug it into some speakers, and I just stuck the Tekken 3 soundtrack on. And you was I listen to this all the time, it's great. And that was
better than the game, to be honest. Yeah, I have it on Spotify. It's all up there. Got it all saved. And
I'm going to just talk a little bit around the same sort of time in the late 90s, early 2000s. Obviously games really developed, and there was always a little bit of a step ahead on the PC. And on the PC, we started to get some absolutely fantastic soundtracks that they didn't necessarily sort of interact with the game directly, but they were great backing soundtracks for what you were doing. So I'm thinking of games like The Sims 1 and 2, that the soundtrack to me, like I can listen to it now, especially in Sims 2, and I get such nostalgia. You know, them sort of music as you're in the menus and you're building houses and things.
Yeah.
But they were great songs. I'm thinking of Theme Hospital. The soundtrack to that is brilliant, but it didn't actually have anything to do with the game. But because the technology had progressed, Age of Empires 2 is another one, and one that, you just had this great, well-produced CD quality music playing in the background that you're happy to sort of listen to while you played the game, and that was quite a new thing at the time.
What was the song they had for? I think it was like FIFA 98 or like FIFA 2000. That was like the iconic tune for when you started up the game.
Do you mean? I'm trying to think what one do you mean. Do you mean like Blur song 2?
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
FIFA 98. FIFA, to be fair, I think we would talk about licensed soundtracks later. Was very early on the bandwagon of good licensed soundtracks, that they'd have like well-known songs. That was quite a new thing. Like on the PlayStation 1, I remember, this is a really random fact, I was in hospital in like 2003 and I was playing FIFA 2003, and like loads of people were like, oh my god, there's real music on this video game, like, and it was the song playing was, remember Miss Dynamite? Miss Dynamite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that song. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is like in the charts, but it's on your football game in your console. What the hell?" Like,
Yeah,
believe it.
Nowadays, you
It's the
sort of take
future.
that for granted. That so many games have licensed soundtracks, and FIFA always has done, as far as I remember. But it was such a like exciting, interesting thing back then.
Like I say, that Blur song just reminds me of FIFA. No matter what, like I don't play FIFA. My brother did, and he played 98.
Yeah.
Like crazy. I just remember him booting up the game and just hearing that song, and like I know in the last podcast we talked about like music that would send us back in the past, and that would be the one that would send me back of me seeing sitting in my brother's bedroom while he's playing it. Just hearing that tune come on.
There you go, with the fantastic graphics and realistic gameplay that FIFA 98 brought.
For those who don't know what the Blur song is, it's called Blur Song 2.
Yeah, Song 2.
Very very original name.
And FIFA 98 Road to World Cup was the game that
which
James is talking about, 'cause I played it a lot as well.
Yeah, like I said, it was one of my brother's favourite games. And it was actually a game that my brother wanted me to do a video on. So this is kind of me making up for it.
Bringing us into the very modern era, I just wanted to kind of talk about something really cool that I've been learning about recently, which is adaptive music in video games, which I think pretty much all games nowadays use some form of like adaptive or dynamic music, which essentially the kind of concept is that the music changes, or the music pretty much changes depending on what you, the player, are doing in the game, while still being one seamless kind of piece of music. So kind of one of the best examples I can think of that is like Splinter Cell games. I don't know if you guys played much Splinter Cell.
I still want to get around to playing. Is it Twin Snake?
So there's a bunch of them. I think Chaos Theory is like one of the first ones to kind of do adaptive music, which is basically like there's some like ambient music happening in the background, and then you kind of make a noise or someone notices you or something like that, and then it's the same piece of music but it like becomes a little bit more intense. Like there are some drums playing now or something else is happening. And then, they've noticed you and you get in like a gunfight with these guys, and suddenly the music is like really, really intense and really loud, and there's loads of stuff happening. I think there's some cool like jazzy stuff that happens in the Chaos Theory soundtrack specifically, which is really cool, while you're, blasting some guys away with your rifle or whatever it is. And then I think you've killed everyone, You know, you've had your gunfight, everyone's dead, and then you kind of get that sound effect of like, and then the music kind of ramps down again and goes back to being kind of ambient or like calm again because you've kind of got out of danger. And I think that's really, really cool when that happens.
And I say, like, it's interesting because I'd like to know sort of, because the technology was kind of there to do it, but it's just really difficult to. I'm trying to put it into words. So, we were just talking about PS1 games and stuff, and I was going to talk a little bit about Parappa the Rapper because that's one of the first games where it was like a rhythmic game where you had to press the buttons, but the music changed depending on how well you did as you played the game and the circumstances. Like the actual background music changed depending on the inputs you put in. And I guess in modern times it's kind of an extension of that technology, but to a whole new level.
I guess that must have been like one of the kind of pioneering games almost behind that sort of that technology.
And you guys are going to have to forgive me because I've literally forgotten the name of the series. Am I right? There is a series of games, and I think they're like hack and slash games, where the music gets like worse depending on how bad you do.
Isn't that Dark Souls?
Dark Souls. Is it Dark Souls? It's a game like
be.
Dark Souls. I don't think it's Dark Souls, but it's a game like Dark Souls. Because there was a famous story a couple of years ago about an IGN journalist who reviewed this game and said the soundtrack was absolute like dog water. It's terrible. Like, it's awful. How can they do it? And everyone was like, mate, like, if you're terrible at the game,
good.
then the soundtrack's terrible. And it sounds horrible on purpose, and it gets better. And I've literally Googled what game this is like 3 times today to bring this up, and I can't remember. So
Must
if anyone
be Dark
can
Souls.
remember, get in touch.
I've seen so many memes of that on like YouTube of how game journalists play Doom Eternal, and it's like some guy facing a wall, shooting the wall, like, oh, this is so hard. So good.
Doom Eternal has a fantastic soundtrack in its own right. I know we're probably jumping ahead, but it's just the metal and the electric sounds that come from it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. It's such a cool like reimagining of what the original soundtracks were like as well, because they were kind of that same what were they, like the early 90s?
Yeah.
So kind of maybe the late 16-bit kind of. I remember it all being like really sort of bad sounding samples that were kind of put together in like roughly a heavy metal song.
Yeah, and the whole idea is just to get your blood going, really, isn't it? Because like Doom Eternal is just such a fast-paced game that they just again hit it right on the head of what type of music to use, of like fast-paced heavy metal, drums, guitars, and got the electric rhythm coming out of it as well, just to keep you motivated to keep going and just keep wanting to slay the demons.
I believe the like the really loud, intense, like metal sections of the music are dynamic in the new Doom games. I think they are. Like when you find an enemy and start fighting them, suddenly, a bunch of death metal starts happening. And then once everything's dead, it's like calm again.
Yeah, exactly. Because you kind of have like zones where you may have like waves of enemies coming at you, and like you say, like it amplifies the sounds. And again, from memory, I think once you kill them, it just decreases to kind of like the normal background music.
Yeah, it's awesome. And a game that I was that I kind of briefly mentioned earlier called Noita, which is like the most brutally punishing game probably ever. It's just so incredibly difficult. It's one of those like what you were saying earlier, where it has like permadeath, where it's like a 2D side scroller, and you can progress through the game for like hours, and as soon as you die, then that's it, the whole save gets wiped and you just have to start again.
Oh wow.
And everything kills you as well in this game. It's absolutely brutal.
It sounds a bit like Ghost and Ghouls or Ghosts and Goblins or whatever it's called.
Yeah, but like on drugs of some kind.
Every run is just no loads of run. Blimmin' hell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really ridiculous, and I've only got so far in the game because I'm, bad. But I believe the music. So I was reading a little bit about the music for this game, and it's like generative music. So rather than being dynamic, like when you're in a fight, this starts playing. It's all kind of based on like random numbers and like percentages.
Oh wow!
So the guy basically recorded just a bunch of instrumental parts, like guitar parts. There's some like horns or trumpets or something in there, like ambient noises. And there's basically at any given point, there's just like a percentage chance that this instrument will happen, or like that instrument might happen here.
Literally RNG to make a soundtrack with like an algorithm.
Yeah, it is.
Is that the future of music?
It is pretty much in video games. Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely mental stuff.
The robots will be writing music for us soon.
So it's almost like there literally isn't a soundtrack, because you can't, like, the soundtrack will never be the same twice. On any two playthroughs, you'll never get the same music happening. So I guess we have arrived on our journey through time in the present day. So why don't I just open the floor again and put to you guys some personal picks we each kind of picked out before we did the episode, of just some soundtracks that we like, regardless of the time period they were in or the hardware. What are some soundtracks that just remember very fondly?
I'll kick off, and this is just because it's a soundtrack I keep returning to all the time, and it's the soundtrack for the first Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 games, which, if you listen to it, it basically has every genre of game, every genre of music in that game. Yeah. It has rock, it has jazz, it has pop, it has like electric orchestra, and just everything in these games for the different levels. And that was the other cool thing about the game, is like every single level you go into, or like zone, they sometimes call it, all had its own distinct sound. And throughout all the Sonic games, they always try to make a different soundtrack wherever possible. They don't like to go back to what they had originally, or if they do, they throw a massive twist to it. And like, it was probably one of the first series of games that actually started having voices, or actually have singers in the music for the game.
Yeah,
like the very opening to Sonic Adventure 2, they have a song called City Escape, which is again very iconic, and it just stops
from the
off.
city. Yeah,
that's it. And just the bass at the beginning, the do 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 kind of like beginning bit. It's just it gets you driving, and then the vocals kick in and everything. And it is one of the big times for a band called Crush 40, who pretty much got introduced introduced into the world through Sonic, or Sonic Adventure, and the actual Sonic team go back and use them again and again for various of the other songs and other games, because each of the characters get their own theme tune as well, which all has vocals and stuff. And again, everyone's different. Like Knuckles has kind of like a rap reggae kind of sound at times, and then like Amy gets like a kind of like a girly pop song. And then when you go into Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow gets like this really emo metal kind of thing, because he's like dark and edgy, and like they pick it all up really well. And like, again, just the general theme songs for the games, like Live and Learn for Sonic Adventure 2. It's just such a catchy tune. And Open Your Eyes, Open Your Heart for the first one. And again, it was one of those first games that actually let you listen to the soundtrack in the game. So when you progressed and unlocked the characters, you got to unlock their song. So you could go into the like options menu and just listen to the soundtrack. And that's what I used to do quite a bit as a kid. if I was doing something else, I would actually have that just playing in the background instead of having like just a normal CD playing.
Yeah, I mean, they're great songs, even just out of the context of a game. The Crush 40 songs and all that stuff. They're really cool. So a question for you that I had, because this ties in quite nicely with the game, obviously Persona 4 that I mentioned earlier, and kind of the Persona series in general, is that a lot of those games have songs with lyrics in them as well, where like the guy Shoji Meguro, who is the composer behind those games, who is a genius. He usually teams up with like one singer, and then that singer does like all of the singing for each game. And he was asked about having lyrics in the game, and he basically said that because the games are Japanese, the words are in English, the players wouldn't find the lyrics like distracting or off-putting or anything like that, because they wouldn't understand the lyrics. But now obviously they've released them in English-speaking territories as well. And I think the same is for Sonic, right? Is it a Japanese?
Yeah, I think if you from what you sent over to me for Persona 4, so I had a good listen to it, and just straight away I was like, "This is a Sonic. This is just Sonic Adventure." Like that, you have tunes in it that just very similar, like a lot of piano, a lot of jazz kind of music, and I think just having vocals in the song makes it more memorable, for me at least, because again, like say Live and Learn, I could just sing the lyrics. I'm not going to because I have a terrible singing voice, but I know the words to that song because I listened to it so many times, and so I will always remember it. And again, like Persona, I've never played Persona 5, but I've listened to the soundtrack because I kept hearing how great it was. And like you said, they used this one singer throughout the whole thing, and she has an amazing voice. Last Surprise, that's what it's called, Last Surprise. Again, it's a very well-known song for video games, and it's like the iconic song for that series. And strangely enough, I started listening to it when my daughter was born, and I started singing it to her with it playing in the background, and it used to send her to sleep. So if you want any tips for getting your kids to sleep, video game music ain't that bad of a way to go to get your
a lifelong Persona fan in the making there.
Well, I sung quite a lot of Sonic Adventure songs to her as well, and that used to send her to sleep. I don't know if it just bored her to sleep or what, but it works.
I mean, they're awesome songs. So that kind of answers my question then, was that you don't think the having lyrics in a song that you can actually understand and sing along to, you don't find that distracting at all when you're playing the game?
No, definitely not. I think it adds to it, if anything. Like a later series, Metal Gear Solid Rising, I think it's called.
Yeah, Metal Gear Rising something or other.
Yeah, something or other. The bosses all had their own soundtrack, and that all had vocals in as well. And again, it wasn't a game that I actually played, but I would actually go and listen to the soundtrack, and I watched the gameplay, and I kind of got myself into a zone of like, if I was playing that, would it be distracting? But it wouldn't. I think it actually adds to it. And again, it kind of makes it into a movie, or even like a music video in a way.
One thing I did notice, because I've played Sonic Adventure 2 out of the two of those games, and what I found really funny and really, really like cheesy, really corny, but also I was kind of into it, was that the lyrics of the first, so like the Escape from the City song, the level, you are literally escaping from a city, and the lyrics are basically just like describing what's happening in the level. I just thought that was like the cheesiest thing ever. It was so fun. I was
but like you say, it is really fun. And Dr. Eggman's theme tune is all about how great he is. And I think it's like a little note that he's actually written the lyrics or something like that.
It's awesome. So it almost makes it into like a musical, like you say, like a stage show.
It's like, yeah, it's like its own little music video, which again I think Persona kind of the whole series is kind of like they're stylized to be a bit like that as well.
Yeah, oh, the music is so good in those games. So brilliant. Right, Tom,
Right,
a personal pick for one of your favorite soundtracks.
go on. I'm going to cheat and use a licensed one. Sit down, everybody. It's story time. No, basically, anyone who knows me knows I
Tom's
have a
turn.
penchant of a penchant for like 1980s music, especially like old synth music and stuff. I just love it. It's one of my favourite things. Anyway, 99% of the reason for this is the game Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Nice.
It's, in my opinion, the best, if not one of the best licensed soundtracks ever. And it's got so much good music from the time. But the point is, the game is set in 1980s Vice City, which is Miami. It's basically a copy of Scarface. If you've ever seen it, great film. And the soundtrack feeds into it. It makes you feel like and think you're in that sort of 1980s environment. And there's, I want to say 7 or 8 radio stations. There's well over 100 songs, and they're just so good. And I still listen to. There's a few YouTube videos of like the radio stations, and I listen to them to this day. That if I can't think of what to put, like on, then I'll just YouTube Wave 103 or Flash or Emotion and just listen to them. And there's so many good. Like, it's not just like they've picked like cheap songs from the time to not, pay the full amount or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Done it on the cheap. They've picked some absolutely great classic 80s songs like Michael Jackson songs like Billie Jean or Africa by Toto.
Oh, I didn't realize they had songs like that on it.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's like they're just good songs to listen to. 99 Love Balloons. I'm just trying to think of like.
I'm gonna have to listen to these later. Wow, I didn't actually realize that was in the game, because in the later GTA games, it's just kind of like random songs that aren't much of anything. I think they were kind of created for the game.
Yeah, so I don't know. GTA 5, there were some good ones, but like I just quickly googled the soundtrack, and Emotion's got like Africa. It's got Waiting for a Girl Like You by Foreigner. Broken Wings is a good song. Like, it's got REO Speedwagon. It's got Hall & Oates. Like, I'm just going through the soundtrack.
You're hitting my feels there with all those bands. Oh, God,
Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Tears for Fears. Human League. Spandau Ballet. What more do you need? Like, it's got Gold by Spandau Ballet. That was like the first time I heard that song, and it's one of my favourite songs.
And one of the great things is about that is that it's got something for quite a variety of different tastes as well. There's like a rock channel on the radio.
Yep, V-Rock. It's got like, a bit of Judas Priest and Megadeth and Iron Maiden. Just honestly, like, I could sit and do like a series of podcasts on GTA Vice City, why I think is one of the best games I've ever played. But the soundtrack is such an important part of it, and it's just so good. So the GTA
important part of the world building.
It's an important part of my world building, let alone GTA Vice City. It's the soundtrack of my life.
That's a good one.
So there we go.
It is a good introduction into music, though, isn't it? Like getting all these different bands in there, and again, just giving you all that opportunity to listen to it.
And it's almost like obviously. It's not an exact microcosm of the time because they're all from different points in the 80s and all sorts. But it does feel like you're almost there at the time listening to, because a lot of the radio stations have like they're led by DJs who are characters in it, and they're all characters within the game and the world, and it just feels so real, like you're there. That
Did it have the Did it have the entire song, or was it like?
No, yeah, the entire song.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the entire song, and if you just Google the GTA Vice City soundtrack, like, and they even released at the time, and I think you can buy it for quite a lot of money now, the full soundtrack on like a CD box set that you could buy. Yeah, they're all the full songs, and they're just great. It's just amazing. So there.
So the question that I had for you about GTA is obviously that Vice City and San Andreas after it were like a lot more cartoonish.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways than later, like GTA 4, GTA 5.
Yeah.
So, having the sort of over-the-topness of 80s music and, like, I guess San Andreas was the 90s, right? It had, like, 90s...
Yeah, and it had a lot of 90s hip-hop and alt-rock, like Rage Against the Machine, things like that.
So, the music was very of the time, and we remember the times in quite a over-the-top, kind of ridiculous, caricaturish way.
Yeah.
So do you think then that GTA 4 and 5, especially the soundtracks, will age as well as those two?
So GTA 4 probably not, because I don't remember the soundtrack. GTA 5 had some genuinely like good modern music, but you're right, because it was set in the modern day. I don't think, I may be wrong, but for me personally, like, I don't remember the soundtracks as being so individual to the games. Me and one of my good friends, Gareth, were talking about this, because I was like, because I played through San Andreas a while ago, and I said I definitely prefer the Vice City soundtrack, but I'm going to stay with the San Andreas soundtrack and not, because on PC you can import any soundtrack you want.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the setting of the game that I want to feel like I'm in Los Angeles or Las Vegas or San Francisco in the the early 1990s, and part of that is the soundtrack. That I don't think listening to the soundtracks in GTA 4 or 5 take you to their locations or the time frame quite like they do in the previous ones.
No, I think maybe as well there were so many radio stations in those games that like you could almost choose. You could choose to listen to like an 80s station if you wanted to in 5, I think, or there was like a punk rock one or a I don't know, like a hip hop one or something. Yeah, the character of the music was just kind of whatever you wanted it to be.
Absolutely. Rather than there is no dodging. I mean, unless you want to go to the like V-Chat or K-Chat, that's the one, K-Chat, or any of the sort of voice radio stations, which are also hilarious. They're like really great caricatures on talk radio. But yeah, unless you go to them, there is no escaping the 80s music in Vice City. It's just there, like, that's what it is.
It's awesome. I remember buying a few CDs off of the strength of Vice City.
Oh yeah,
it was pretty cool. I think Yes got me into a bit of Yes.
Owner of a
Lonely Heart was on there.
Yeah.
Which none of their other music is anything like that, so that was kind of
you got debated.
I did. I got suckered in by that one song.
You've convinced me to play the game now just on that. I've never played it, but now you said about the soundtrack, I feel like I have to play it.
I mean, the thing about the game is as well, you don't even have to play the missions. You can just cruise around, like in a nice, like, go find a nice car with the top down and just cruise around Vice City listening to Spandau Ballet. Like, what could be better?
Turn up at the Malibu Club.
Exactly. Turn up at the Malibu.
Go visit Danny Dyer.
Go see Kent Paul.
Yeah.
You get really bored, just shoot the place up and then start all over again.
A soundtrack that I kind of picked out that really I thought was really, really brilliant is for the game Undertale. It's obviously very well known, and the internet has kind of like chewed this game up and spat it back out again with all the memes and the fan content and all that kind of stuff. Like it's difficult in a way to admit in all earnestness that you like Undertale because it's like,
really,
it's been so really kind of swallowed game. Up, and it is really really popular, but it's been memed to oblivion. Basically.
It's what's the guy called? Sans.
Yeah,
the skeleton guy. He's just like a total meme. Bringing it back to Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, you could get a you could get a Sans outfit, and he became the troll outfit to play as when you play online. So if you want to play as a troll character, you had the Sans head.
Yeah, it's become that kind of a thing. And there are whole like genres of Undertale fan games out there that people have made and stuff like that. But and like you two guys have mentioned with other soundtracks, I was watching a video. It was I think it was in Tokyo, where an orchestra had put together an orchestra version of the soundtrack for Undertale as like a 5th anniversary concert. And I was a bit like, is it normal to like tear up at video game music? Just have a manly little cry at that's Undertale.
Like, that shows that it's hit you emotionally.
It really did, and it goes.
Paid off.
Yeah, it really did, and it goes from really quite sort of nice, playful, like whimsical little, parts to some really just like silly kind of jokey music to some really dark sounding stuff to the really awesome epic like rock songs like Megalovania, which I'm sure everyone's probably heard is like the big famous song from like the final battle.
Yeah, and I said to you recently, like I used to have that song as like my go-to wake up to go to work song. Like it would just get me pumped.
Oh wow!
Day.
It really does. I have to use it sparingly, otherwise the pumpedness will wear off. It won't work anymore.
And just on the whole thing, like it's Toby Fox, isn't it? The guy who made the whole game and the music on his own, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a single developer game. I think he'd worked on like a couple of soundtracks before, and I think some of the music for this one was the first stuff that he did before kind of designing anything or really starting to make the game. I think he like wrote a couple of the music pieces.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like he wrote an album's worth of music or something, and then just made a game. It's like, I better have something to make this the soundtrack of, so he just like made a game. And it became so successful. He was just like, I didn't know why. I think he still considers it to be like a really niche, because it is a strange game. It's like a kind of an RPG parody sort of game.
Yeah, I've played it, and I really struggled to get into it. It's probably I just didn't give it the time, and I need to go back to it. But the combat just seemed a bit odd. It was very much one of those you're gonna have to press A at the right time to either dodge something or like move your heart around to dodge attacks. It's not like a standard like attack, do a spell, they do attack.
Yeah, there's timing involved. I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, but it sounded like you did some combat then when you played it.
Oh, I did not go passive. Why would
that's
you?
That's the whole idea of the game, is that you don't have to. You can go through the whole game and you don't have to kill any of the enemies or anything like that.
How many different endings are there to the game?
What is there, like neutral, pacifist, true pacifist, genocide? So like four different. Okay. And the game, if you play it again, if you do like a second playthrough, stuff, really subtle stuff like changes about the game depending on what you did in the last playthrough, which is really cool. It's one of those multiple endings, and all the RPG tropes are all in there. It's kind of like a bit of a send up of all of that stuff. It's got like a really great sense of humor about it, and I think that's reflected in a lot of the music as well. The kind of like silly, slapsticky sense of humor, but the whole thing doesn't really take itself too seriously.
So a question to you, Dan, because you've always asked us questions. Do you think the way Toby Fox made the music should be like the way music should be going into the future, where it's like one ideal and it's very situational, or he created a situation around the music?
I mean, there's, with something like a game, there's so many different forms of art that go into it that, there's no one right or wrong way to really come up with an idea for a game. And of course, I think, if you're making a soundtrack for a game, it should be all based around kind of the same idea, or the composer or composers should come up with kind of a the basic idea of what they want the world of the game to kind of sound like, and then do all that stuff. I don't know that I could really prescribe something like that. You kind of come up with it however you come up with it, really.
Fair.
Yeah, because in my opinion, I think it was like very lucky what happened to the game and the music, because it was just. I remember reading up on it. It came out at a time when there wasn't actually many big major releases, so it was like a very cheap game on Steam, and people looked at it like, this seems a bit wacky. Let's give it a go. And then obviously the story and the characters and the music drew everyone in. And looking at Toby Fox's career now, it's immense. The games he's been in. He did the entire music for a game called Little Town Hero, which was created by Game Freak, which are the people that make the Pokemon series. And he even did music for Pokemon Sword and Shield, the latest big Pokemon game. And he also did music for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
There you go.
Probably did, because they did like a remixed version of Megalovania, didn't they, for the Sans?
Well, they did, but
I think so.
But he did actually help with a lot of the other music, so I had to throw in another Super Smash.
It's like 6 degrees of separation, whatever, except it's actually just separation from Super Smash Bros. Like
everything's always only 1 degree away from Super Smash.
It's
starting to make me not feel so bad about my Final Fantasy diatribes now that you're.
Yeah, or me about Tomb Raider. Every podcast, how can we talk about Final Fantasy, Tomb Raider, and Super Smash Bros?
Find a way. Even in the FIFA episode, I'll do it.
There you go.
To be honest, though, if you put those 3 games up there, if like as a bit of a spider map, a lot of games do link back to them being like the inspiration or examples of and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. They're the sort of that they were so original for their times that a lot derived from them. So that's our excuse for keeping going back to them.
It's because they're good.
Yeah, they're good. Play them.
If they weren't so good, we wouldn't talk about them all the time. Yeah.
True.
Oh yeah.
There's a reason we're not talking about Bubsy 3D.
I mean, maybe we should. Maybe it's just a misunderstood classic.
The soundtrack is diabolical and dreadful. Possibly the worst I've ever heard. It's just really annoying. So
it's really the only thing letting the game down.
It is. To be fair, it's a really good game apart from the soundtrack, the controls, the graphics, the level design, and just the overall feel of it. And the storyline that makes no sense. And the cutscenes.
Apart from that.
Other than that, 10 out of 10.
Okay.
10 out of 10.
We'll give it a 9 because of those tiny flaws. Cool. So, are there any other picks that we want to talk about?
Can I just give a quick shout out? I won't go too much in depth about this game, but there's a game called Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and Dan will have heard me talk about this a few years ago, and it's people call it a walking simulator, but basically it's like somewhere between, essentially almost like an interactive film, because it's a game, but you don't necessarily influence what's going on other than exploring around the world. But as the story unfolds, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. The music here sort of assists. It's written by a composer called Jessica Curry, and it's just absolutely beautiful as a soundtrack. The whole soundtrack's about an hour long, and you can find it on YouTube, and it's sort of orchestral and choral music that go in the background while the story unfolds, and it's just beautiful. It's really well timed as storyline developments happen, and graphically it's a beautiful game. It looks fantastic, and then it's that sort of visual design meets this great audio design, this brilliant music, and it just goes great with a good, beautiful game. I just really like it.
I think I'd really enjoy that, actually. Might have to give that a little.
On Steam.
Give that a little play.
It's
Let's do it.
Jessica Curry also did, I believe it was Dear Esther, which was another one. Did the soundtrack for that as well. So, yeah, I love a good walking simulator.
Kind of almost a little like a very Japanese genre of game, visual novels. I know they're probably a little bit trashier than, you know, generally than something like Everything's Gone to the Rapture, but like where there's not really much in the way of gameplay.
No, but if you want to become
like the story is happening,
engulfed in a world, then like gaming is gaming. Like, because some people get a bit snobbish, and I don't know if we'll end up doing more of a podcast on this in sort of and going deeper on it, but people can get a bit snobbish. But if you're playing a video game and you're enjoying what's happening, then it's a game as far as I'm concerned, and all power
absolutely. I was trying out a visual novel game. It was a really classic one. It's called Steins Gate.
I've heard of that.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like it was cool. Literally, all you have to do is just click through the text. That's it. Like people talk, and you just click.
Oh,
and that's it.
That reminds me of there's a really good one, and Avery Attorney. If anyone's heard of Avery Attorney, basically you're literally a bird in a courtroom. And it's like almost like a courtroom type drama.
Crazy.
But you're a bird, and you click through it, and it all unfolds. And it's only it's a silly game, and I think it's an indie game on Steam, and it's a few hours long. But to just have a little bit of fun and kill some time, it's bloody brilliant. It's great.
It's cool, and if you want to just be told a good story in kind of a slightly novel way, then cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the thing with Steins Gate was that I looked it up, and I think to play it through from start to finish is quite a long time, like 60, 70 hours or something like that. And I was I think like a few hours of just passive gameplay, sure, but for something that length, I think they've made a TV series of it. So I'm like, I think I'm just going to...
Netflix series or a...
Yeah, the anime is up on Netflix. They made of that, so I might just... I might give up and just watch that instead.
There you go.
Just on these series of games, I mentioned on one of my VG vlogs about a new game coming out, but I'll talk about the original one. It's an indie game called Oxenfree, which is a side-scrolling game. You're not like doing any platforming or anything like that. It's a little bit of puzzles, but the whole game itself is the dialogue. So you're choosing choosing how you got to talk in a situation. Are you going to be negative, neutral, or very happy, or
nice,
ass kissing in a way. But depending on what you say in your options you choose from, it changes the game itself, and it's all the story. And like I say, it's just the dialogue. But like Tom says, some people may not think of that as a game, but if it's got the whole core aspect of visuals, game, music, as well as some kind of control, I think, then it's a game.
Yeah, as long as you do something, even if it's just clicking every now and again. Or
so one of the other game soundtracks that I think is just amazing is again, it's not going to be a James podcast without me talking about Pokemon, but
I can't believe it took this long, to be honest.
I know.
Been holding it in this whole time.
Whatever this ridiculous timestamp of like nearly 2 hours is going to be. Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2, which is the 5th generation, had some absolutely amazing music. I don't know if you guys managed to listen to that little kind of 10-minute video with some of the tunes, but...
Yeah, I did. Have a little spin.
It's just full of trumpets and saxophones and just full-on energy for whatever you do. And I think Pokemon was actually one of the first game series to have dynamic music, where like if your health bar goes too low, then it starts kicking in like an urgent kind of sound message to you, like, oh, you better heal up, or you better finish this fight soon, kind of thing. And something they introduced a bit later on into the series, which I think it was actually Gen 5, that if you in a gym battle and the gym leader is on their last Pokemon, the music changed again, where it was like a lot more hard driven music of like kind of get you into that moment of like you're nearly there, you nearly finished this gym, and this is the last Pokemon to defeat, so it like amplifies everything. And again, just an amazing soundtrack, and it has in my opinion, one of the most emotional songs in there, which is literally just called Emotional Theme.
The Pokemon game.
Pokemon can be emotional at times, but no. But if we go and it's not really. Not much happens to a kid that goes around catching
until
Pokemon.
Emotional Theme comes on, and then the tears come out.
And then James cries.
Do listen to it. I have to say, it is really quite emotional, and I think it has been used in like other people's videos for like emotional moments. It's definitely one to look up. But yeah, the whole Pokemon series has an amazing soundtrack, but I do think Black and White have probably some of the best out of them all.
Okay, so those have been some of our favourite game soundtracks from throughout the years. Let us know in the comments down below whether you agree, whether you disagree, or whether you have any that you think we've missed that were really important and essential game soundtracks from throughout the years.
Yeah, and firstly, thank you, Dan, for hosting. I hope you enjoyed being the host this time round.
Thank you, I sure did. Thank you for unleashing me on your podcast.
I thought it was kind of the perfect one to set you up on because, you make video game music, you know?
I do.
Maybe that can be a topic for the future about the work it puts into it. But no, it was really, for me, it was really interesting hearing all the technical side of things because, again, when you listen to this stuff, you just think, this sounds really nice to listen to or whatever, but you don't really go thinking the in-depth how in-depth it all goes into.
Yeah, well, thank you. Glad I could entertain you for a while with my useless knowledge.
It's definitely not useless. Definitely not useless. And thank you again, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you
and
for
talking
having
about
me.
giving you another excuse to talk about Tomb Raider.
I do play games that aren't Tomb Raider. I promise.
Vice City.
GTA.
Yeah, we may hear about these other games in the future. But that's it. That's it from us. So thank you very much for listening. Do look to subscribe to How to Game Differently and click on that notification bell so that YouTube can alert you that there is a new video or podcast from How to Game Differently. And again, thank you very much for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.